My monster would not be complete without proper hands. Doesn't look at all like my inspiration, but that's what it was. That's what it is, an inspiration. One thing's for sure is I want to make it as large as possible. Not as large as possible, but larger than life, I should say. And you see his really skeleton looking hands. Well, I found other pictures of hands, and I want to, because I want to make it larger than life, then it's important for me to start without really knowing yet where I'm going, aside from my mental picture and the inspiration that I get from the pictures that I found on the internet. I'll start with these, and I've had great success with this in the past because it's very, very firm and thick, and it holds its shape. So with that 9-gauge wire, I'll be able to have the hand hold something without any issue. Instead of starting immediately on forming one hand, I resisted the temptation of starting immediately by doing a second hand with pretty much the same length of digits. You know, I need the hand to also be flexible, to be round if needed. Can't just have it flat like that. It's not gonna look real, because I might want to have the flexibility of holding something like this or like that. So yeah, let's just continue thinking. Sometimes it's good to take a break and come back to your projects a few minutes later and keep your inspiration in mind. So I'm using pipe insulating foam for the joints, and because those are the areas where I'll be bending the fingers. And in between the joints, I'll be using the Lepage tight foam, or in the US you have Loctite, for the bone area and not the joints. So that's why I'm gonna have to be very careful when I bend the fingers in order to achieve my position. I'll have to be careful not to crack the insulating foam. So I find, obviously, the best reference is your hand. When I look at my hand, the joints here are pretty much the same level, the same area, just a wee bit. And the beauty of I just realized by doing what I did is I can play with the joints for now until they're good. So this is pretty much the same level, because this area here is going to be covered up. The middle joints, obviously this one is higher, so I'm going to move it up a bit. This one here is a bit lower, and the same thing here, and this is pretty much where the nails will be starting. So that section here might be a bit too long, but I'll worry about that later. And here the joints are right there where it's going to be filled up. So this is going to be filled up to here, and then I have another joint higher up here. So let's continue. So if I look at my hand, the joint will be here. And the other joint pretty much there. Yeah. That's a ghost, flying ghost. But you see how the hand is able to be flexible on the round like this. If I fill it up with tight foam, it's not going to work, but if I use only this foam, that's how it's going to work. And no, I finally decided to do it with tight foam. But it would have been a possibility to use the pipe insulating foam as the inside of the hand. The insulating foam is the better option anyways because of the texture and also the ability to be able to sculpt it to the way you want it. So finally I decided to work from the floor of my garage, because when you work with insulating foam, you don't have time to do one hand, then remove it, and then do the other hand, and then remove it, and then do the feet, then remove it, do the other feet, and remove it, because you need to work really, really fast. So as you can see, I use pretty much the same technique for the feet. I use the reference, I use my own feet, and I did the same in case I would need to bend the joints, which I had to do actually to give it a more realistic effect. And that's what I use, tight foam, and in the States you have Loctite. So I'm going to be shaking this for at least a couple of minutes. Make sure you shake it like heck, because you'll be sorry afterwards when the foam doesn't come out properly. So I'll put the camera on my tripod so that you can see the process, but quite frankly I'm doing this for the first time using hands and feet, so I don't know if it's going to work out. I just want to give you a quick opportunity to tour my workshop, which is in my 2-car garage. This is a flying ghost that I created for my upcoming project of flying ghost apparatus that you'll see later. My pumpkin witch from Distortions Unlimited that will be on display for the first time. I just bought it. I'm so proud. This is our skeleton monster that we're working on. And you'll find tutorials for this pumpkin monster in the back, and the cauldron witch with moving head and moving hands that stirs the pot. So I'm very proud of that one also. It's available on a separate tutorial. Okay, because there's a lot, I live close to an airport, there was a lot of airplane noise, so I'm just going to continue the voiceover. As you can see, I use garbage bags because the foam does not stick to the garbage bags. And make sure you use gloves. I cannot insist more on the necessity to use gloves, because insulating foam, once it gets in your hands, I'm telling you, you could be stuck with that foam on your hands for a couple of days. If you notice here, I've made a mistake because I should have a right hand on one side and a left hand on the other side. And I will make that correction a little bit later, but right now it's as if I'm doing a duplicate of a left hand, and that's why you have to make sure that one hand is facing one way, the other hand is facing the other way, because what I'm doing now is the top of the hand. So yeah, make sure you have that water. As you can see, I have the water next to me because you want to be able to spray everything with water once you've finished putting the insulating foam. And also the way I was doing it, make sure that you get some of that foam underneath the wiring, not just on top of it, because you want to cover completely the wire and you don't want to have to apply twice the insulating foam. So this project takes about, I would say about 3 cans of foam to be able to do. And as you can see, I am doing my best to use the foam, to spray the foam where the bones are and not where the joints are, because all the joints that you see as mentioned before, will be the bending areas. So I will need the flexibility of the joints to be able to bend the hand the way I want it to bend. By the way, you have to wait about 3 to 5 minutes depending on the type of phone. You can wait up to 5 minutes to be on the safe side. Right now, I'm just mentioning that I can't use the timer on my phone because my phone is taping right now. Because after 5 minutes, a crust forms, and then you apply a little bit more water to make that barrier between your glove and the foam, so that you can mold it while it's still malleable, because this will become very, very hard. So you want to be able to mold it in order to make the ridges between the bones, and also to mold each and every single fingers. You have enough time. Right now I'm too eager and I'm touching it and it's still very tacky and it's just sticking to my hands, and there's nothing I can do but to replace my gloves. And I'm explaining right now how this is very difficult and discouraging. It's really, really not easy, but in the end it worked out well. You just have to be patient. Speaking of being impatient, here I am trying again, and here's my reaction.
Tabernacle.
Yeah, tabernacle is actually a French-Canadian swear word. Take your time. Depending on the type of foam spray you're going to be using, it's at least a good 3 to 5 minutes before you can actually mold it to the way you want it, with your fingers, using gloves, obviously. And then don't worry too much about it, because you'll be able to sculpt it further once it dries up with a knife, and then adding details with latex and Kleenexes and cotton balls. You will see in a few minutes, a little bit later in the video, how easy it is to sculpt and to really, really bring that hands and feet and your project alive with latex, cotton balls, and Kleenexes.
Oh my god. I hope you'll find this tutorial helpful on what not to do.
You're watching me use saran wrap because I had seen a YouTuber putting saran wrap on top of the foam to be able to mold it afterwards, because this way his fingers would not come into contact with the foam. As you can tell from my level of frustration, this is not quite working out for me. It's not a technique. It's the first time I was using this technique. Maybe with practice it becomes a useful technique, but nah, it definitely did not work for me for this project. By the way, you may want to skip a little bit or forward, because I'm leaving all of my struggles on the video, because I'm having a little bit of guilty pleasure watching me being so frustrated by the process. I'm laughing now because I know that it turned out well in the end. I'm also being careful right now not to put foam where the joints are. Molding it so that I can free up the joints of where the foam is located. It doesn't really matter, because you'll be able to cut the foam afterwards with your knife, cut the insulating foam with your knife where the joints are located, where you have that pipe insulator foam with masking tape. So that's what I'm doing right now, but it wasn't necessary to do so.
ball of the feet here, the foot. I made a mistake. The two hands, it's almost like I made two left hands. Oh my God. I should have put this hand on the other side. Yeah. I'll let it dry for now.
There is a silver lining to certain mistakes. I think you can tell that this hand, it turned out better, much better. So that hand here is actually going to be the right hand. So that's going to be the inside of the right hand. So once this dries, I will turn it around and put additional foam on the other side.
So now my hands are all hard, hands and feet. But they were still okay. This is what I'm going to be using now. Great stuff. For gaps and cracks. It's doesn't take as much volume as the Lepage one. And remember what I said about the straw being full of the foam and eventually it doesn't work? Well, once that gets unusable, you still have this part here that you can press on, just like whipped cream, so you could still use it. You can still empty the can.
You see, as described before, the advantage of the Great Stuff cans is that once the foam gets stuck in the straw, you could still use it in the same way you'd be using whipped cream. And here I am putting additional details like the tendons on top of the foot and filling out the gaps that I may have missed. There are times where you should you realize you should just stay in bed watch TV, and not do this. This is one of those times. What an ugly mess. Can't wait to see what I'm gonna wind up doing with this to salvage it. Can't even imagine. That's the head of the skeleton. That is obviously the best part of the build. I filled it up with foam so I could put my pipe inside, because it's going to be essentially hooked up this way. It's going to be a little forward from the shoulders. So now it's filled with, not filled, but really attached with the leftover foam. And as you can see, this is supposed to be a foot. Yeah. So I got some work to do, and it's still most probably going to be wet inside, but definitely I will need to use my foam cutter as a sculpting tool. But let's not forget, I have my liquid latex from the pottery supply house. That's in my home country of Canada. And this is here. It's going to be put not like so, but just having fun with it, you know. You see, I'll be able to bend the joints because I didn't put any foam in there, but I'm gonna emphasize them even more with latex. Okay, remember how was yesterday where my foam didn't go so well. Waited for it to dry, and then I kind of molded it with my fingers, and I left these parts where the joints will be bending with foam and masking tape for now. And then just now I just added a little more foam by cutting either half or a quarter or whatever of these insulating pipe foam and wrapped it around with masking tape in order to give it a bit more volume. So as you can see, that is the before, and this is the after using the foam. And now I'm covering everything up with latex, because I'll be using this as a first layer, because I'll be using cotton balls and Kleenexes to fill in the gaps. And the latex will, from my previous example, although I'm basing my belief on an example of a much smaller hand, the latex enables me to bend a little bit the foam without cracking it into pieces, because I guess the latex just holds everything together. So we shall see after a few layers. So I'm filling out the gaps between the foam with latex, and cotton balls. And once the cotton balls are drenched or, soaked with the latex, it goes pretty well. And it's friendly to sculpting. So sometimes I use a whole cotton ball. I'll just take out a small piece. And I'm noticing that part of it is not wet. And as you can see, I'm not looking to make it all perfect, shiny, or, even. The cotton balls are helping with the randomness of the results. I'm dressed a little sharp today because my wife and I are going out to see some friends, but she's fashionably late. So while I'm waiting for her, I'm continuing my work. I just want to show you the hands, how they look so far. As you can see, they're huge. Maybe a little too big, but I don't know. The bigger, the better. So, just want to show you something, because I'm about to work on the feet now. The feet are just this big. So I have the foam, the insulating foam that I've put on my 9-gauge wire. Gauge galvanized utility wire available on Amazon in a 50-foot roll. I think it's about $12. The joints are there to make it flexible where the joints are located. So this is not supposed to bend. But if you're not careful with insulating foam, it'll break. So let me show you how it looks when it's bent. And this is what happens when you bend it where the joints are. Now again, keep in mind, this is 9-gauge utility wire, so you have to make sure you put your thumb right where it is, and it bends, and it's super solid. As you can see, it's like super, super solid. So I'll be able to, for as long as the connection between this and the piping, either piping or wood, is going to be solid, and by being careful not to try to bend it where the foam is, that's why I'm putting my finger, because otherwise this will break. The latex is holding it together, and also I didn't round up my joints. There's still more work to do. Maybe with the paint it's not going to show. Yeah, with the paint it's not going to show, so I might not need to add latex, but it's a good idea to put 3-4 layers of latex just to paint it on. And yeah, so that's how it looks like. So that's why I'm able to bend and unbend where the joints are very carefully, especially the tip, because when you force it, where the tip is, the metal rod, the metal wire may go right through the joint. He recommended, the guy from the Stan Winston studio, I'll put the link below. He recommended to use glue, like spray glue, on the foam or any material that you stick latex to. Otherwise, the latex in time, it might flake and it might become undone. I didn't do that, but I did it on parts where I put the cotton balls, because you want the cotton ball to stick. But I should have done it all over the place before I applied the latex. So just a little hint. In the future, for any future projects, I will put cement where I'm planning to apply the latex. I'll do it a bit rounder than what I did with
my hand, I think. But again, keep in mind, I'm keeping in mind that the feet are going to be partially covered with its robe. You still want to have the flexibility in case sometimes you want to show the feet, but there's no sense in putting a lot of detail where it's not going to show. Again, because no matter what, we are all limited with our time. It is now September 16th. See, masking tape, it's perfect. And once the latex is on top of it, it's not going to become undone. So, continuing. I was wrong. I kind of like that I've done it that way because I am posing the feet. But I've decided to do it. So, what I found out from a video that I came across at Stan Winston Studios is that before applying latex, you have to make sure that you spray the area with cement. So I did that with adhesive because he says that latex will not stick directly on the material. It will stick, but it will flake eventually. It'll be flaky. It's not going to be durable. And I found that it's also helpful for me because when I put my little pieces of Kleenexes, and the way I do it is I take a very cheap 2-ply Kleenex and I tear it in pieces like this, and I make long pieces. And because I'll be working with my latex brush, and time is not of the essence, but you want to make it, you want to be consistent in your momentum. So you want to prepare those pieces in advance. Because playing with latex and then playing with your Kleenexes, tissue, it might get messy. So, let me show you how I do it. So I have my surface here, and I've posed them. As you can see, it's kind of going to be the pose that I'm going to be using, but it's okay. I can pose it later because everything's going to be surrounded by latex and it's going to be solid. And as you saw, I spray painted it with cement. Now I put liquid latex everywhere, so my piece of Kleenex sticks well to my foot, to the area that I want to stick my Kleenex. And then I take my long piece of Kleenex and I just randomly put it on there, like so. And then I put Kleenex on it, latex on it, on the Kleenex. And you know what? If it tears, who cares? And in areas like this, that's when this really handy tool, it's available on Amazon, of course, like everything else. It's already got latex on it, so I really need to clean it up because latex really sticks to latex. So I'll push the pieces of Kleenex underneath. Then I can continue with this. And it's kind of sloppy. You know why? Because I'm not putting together a statue of Saint Mary that's going to be displayed at the church, doing a skeleton, an ugly skeleton, monster skeleton. So that's what I love about doing this stuff. It's because it can be random. And that's always the key thing when you do it yourself work like this for an event, Halloween. Like now I'm about 40 days, 45 days to Halloween. And there is so much to do still in 2023, that is. So, you see, the whole piece, I put it on there. I used to put small pieces of Kleenexes. Now I just do the whole piece. And it sticks pretty well. And sometimes, you know what? Let me just overlap it like this. The only thing is that you can't be cheap with latex liquid, because no matter what, you're going to be adding a few layers afterwards. But I will let it dry because I want to do the underneath of it. And sometimes where you see a straight seam like this, don't be afraid to break the Kleenex, to break that seam. Look at the pieces of skin that are dangling. Love it. I don't know if it's going to remain there, but for now, I'm not touching it. Don't hesitate to comment below if you have any better ways of doing this, or if you have any questions. I do answer all the questions because my channel is small, it's tiny. I don't know if it's scary looking or just ugly, because I did an ugly job. That's supposed to look like a foot. Does it look like a foot? What do you guys think? And if it's not really looking good as a foot, no worries. I'll put a drape over it and some creepy cloth like this to hide the foot. Leave it to dry. For me, leaving it to dry means just get it out of the way. I don't have a specific drying spot. And now to the other foot that I've covered with masking tape. My brush, I think I can just say rest in peace for it. I'll take a little break, fill this up with more latex, and continue later. I'll take a nice little walk outside, say hello to the little birdies, and I'll talk to you. I'm gonna go out to take a little break, and I'll talk to you later when I'm on my next step. Stay tuned. I was looking at this foot and I was going, okay, there's not enough, visibility on the bones or the ligaments, whatever you want to call them. You see how deep it is? It's really doesn't look very good to me. I mean, the whole thing might be covered up in his dress, but I just want to show you. I get those equate or great value cotton balls in my Pottery Supply House liquid latex, and I spread it out. I put some latex where I want it to be. Hopefully you can see that well. And I just spread it out. It's relatively easy, quite frankly. And by the way, this is my really helpful tool. Little tiny spatula like this. And I guide, because sometimes my finger gets a little sticky with the latex. And this is really useful to sculpt and guide at the same time. And what I do, the way I do things right now, I'm like a month and a half before Halloween. I'm really not necessarily very stressed with drying times. You could use a heat gun. One thing's for sure is I am not cheap. You see, it just came back up because this is getting sticky also, so. And when there's latex on this, I make sure to clean it on a regular basis. I have my workshop wipe handy. So here it's kind of thin, but I'll see how it goes with the rest. So this is cotton that I've added. I've added some cotton here, but I'll definitely going to continue adding cotton. And cotton balls are essentially little tiny cotton rolls. Anyways, the brand that I use. And it suits me fine. I could use cement, but I don't have a good layer of latex. So as you can see, I laid the cotton balls. I unrolled them and I lay them flat. And I go generously with latex. If you think you have a better way, please share it in the comments below. Because the disadvantage of this is that you need to really soak the cotton with latex, and it takes a long time to dry. Like it could take overnight. And then if you're not in a rush, then that's perfect. You can use a heat gun, but it's still not sufficient because it's embedded inside the cotton. And I use the same technique of the cotton to create the cuticule or cuticula, essentially the nail border. So you could sculpt it with the tool, like a hard tool, a spatula, and it works pretty well. I tried using
masking tape and try to play with it to in order to create a nail, but it didn't work well at all. You're better off just using Kleenexes and then sculpting it as I'm doing now. As you can see, I'm continuing the technique of Kleenexes and cotton balls in order to create the tendons of the fingers. And tendons, muscle tissue, I'm not really an expert on that. The purpose is to really make it look ugly, make it look kind of horrifying. And you'll see right there on the middle finger what I'm doing. And you can even leave a space in between the tendon and the finger in order really to give it that 3D effect. And then I continue with the cuticula with the pieces of Kleenex, a mixture of pieces of Kleenex, and also cotton balls. And yes, you have to do that for the 4 limbs. It takes a while. Another area that's really important to do with the same technique of the cotton is where the joints. If you look at your hand, you're going to see folds where your joints are. So that's what I do, is I use the cotton and I put a lot of latex into it, and then with my tool I kind of sculpt those little folds that we have on our joints, and it makes it extra realistic. It's not going to show that much when you apply it, but once we start painting the hand, and especially with a black dark base, it really shows and it looks great. A great quote from Leonardo da Vinci is, "Art is never finished, merely abandoned." And when you get close to the end, when you say, "That's it, it's going to be it for now," right before painting, going through the painting process, if you want to add additional really nice detail, you take contact cement, I use the Lepage right there, and you blow it with a hair dryer. I would recommend that you bring the can a little closer so you don't waste any contact cement. But by doing so, it provides kind of a webby effect, kind of a web effect that is relatively fragile. But I was surprised on the fact that even after I bent my fingers to put them into position, the webbing, most of the webbing still stayed in place. And I was even able to paint it and emphasize it. So I highly recommend this technique. We are now in the final chapter of this tutorial, which is the painting. What you see on the screen is one of the limbs, I think is the left foot, that I spray painted in black matte color. I still found that it was not black enough, so you'll see me adding additional black paint, black acrylic paint, and that's what I use. I use the cheapest acrylic paint that was available at Michael's, and then with the side of the brush, you'll see me just, we call it dry painting, which is you try to keep your brush as clean as possible, and then you apply the lighter colors by using the side of your brush with acrylic paint. Now I decided to just stop the highlights and add additional black color because I found that the spray painting was not enough. And but make sure that you wait until your acrylic paint has fully dried before putting the highlights. And you can use any color you want. As you can see right now, I use beige paint, and then I'll be using some areas of red paint just to highlight the veins. Yeah, so you see me right now, I'm using the side of my brush very lightly because I'm painting the texture that I created with the latex, the Kleenex, and the cotton all together. So that's what you see right now being highlighted. And also the glue of the contact cement. Um, I took the time and the effort of creating those webby contact cement sections. So I want to make sure that they are visible. And I remember my oil painting teacher used to always give me the remark that I don't put enough highlights in my painting. And that's why, especially when it's Halloween, when your stage is very, very dark, you want the people to see the texture. So you need to kind of exaggerate the highlights. And that's what I'm doing right now with my paintbrush. And you'll notice that I do it in a very casual, quote unquote, way. Then again, it's a monster. It's not a Leonardo da Vinci sculpture that will be in some Italian church somewhere or cathedral. So don't give it too much thought. Just make sure that you highlight the areas of your limbs that you really want to be noticed. So that's the end of part 2. Stay tuned for part 3, where I will be sharing with you how I created the body out of PVC frame and the motor that turns the head. I will also share with you how I created the chest plate and the neck. So that's coming up. Part 3. Please share, like, and also subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. I appreciate you taking the time to view this video. All the best, and see you in the next one.